Hi friends, I'm here with my friend Greg today, and we've got a wonderful product and subject for today. We're going to be talking about hydrogen. Most of the followers of Syncretism and my channel know how much I love hydrogen, and on the par with magnetism, and those are things I've been talking about for years. So welcome to this interview. I guess we could call it an interview.
Yeah,
it's not going to be a typical interview, Greg. I just want you to really show my audience, who are health conscious, very health conscious,
me too,
the best, one of the best protocols, probably if not the best. And I reckon after you're done with explaining this, they will see that it is probably the best. So your channel, Greg, please share that.
So I have a channel. It's called Uprising 144K, the 144,000. So it's Uprising 144K, where I talk about a lot of different things, health, but I've really become kind of a specialist in hydrogen, mostly because of what it does. It's kind of almost hard to believe what this really does. But, and I've been a fan of Santos for a long time, and it was almost incredibly serendipitous that we just happened to be in the same state, not very far from each other. So we just got together and we're like, man, this is just unbelievable. It's almost like the stars have aligned and something happened. And it's an honor to be with Santos today. And what I think is really cool is that Santos has been talking about a bunch of amazing stuff for many years, and I've been a big fan. But like he was telling me is that he's been talking about hydrogen also for quite some time. But the big shift here is that now there's a way on how to actually use the hydrogen and get the power from it, because what science is really showing, and I'm big on the science part, is the science is showing that we are basically hydrogen machines. We create hydrogen in our gut, and we need it for our health. And there's so many things that bog us down, whether it's pesticides in foods, whether it's antibiotics, whether it's just the food in general that we eat, that keep our production of hydrogen down. And as we age, our production of hydrogen just gets lower, and lower. And this leads to like a chain reaction of all sorts of different medical problems. And so now we found a way to supplement it. And when you begin to do it, again, it's crazy. There's almost 2,000 scientific articles showing, like studies, showing its legitimacy. Hydrogen is the real deal. But it's super important to learn how to apply it. I can't even emphasize that enough. Because one of the interesting things when you make hydrogen is that they create byproducts. So there's actually unhealthy ways to make hydrogen. So you have to be really cautious. In fact, I can show you some examples right here. Like there's some pills, they call them hydrogen pills. Stay away from these. You know, they don't even work that great, but they create a chemical reaction and they leave a residue. And in the long term, which is typically within, 6 months of using these type of things, they end up leading to negative side effects. So when I was learning all this, I'm like, how can we just get the pure hydrogen? Because hydrogen in of itself is pure. It's super clean. It is the most pure substance known to man. It is so clean. And so the big question was like, how can I get the hydrogen without any byproduct? Like really clean. So I started learning more and more about it. And interestingly enough, it's the Japanese who really discovered that there's this benefit from hydrogen. They started doing all the studies. They've been studying it for years. And they even had it approved by the Japanese version of their FDA. It's being used now in hospitals in Japan. It's been approved. They know it works. And they're still trying to get more approval because they've literally used hydrogen against certain pharmaceutical drugs, and the hydrogen works better with no side effects. And here's a way that I discovered that you can make it yourself in a very clean way, so it's totally safe. It's so safe you can give it to somebody who's sick. There's no byproducts. And the longer you use it, the better the results begin to be. So like just some examples, just so you guys have an idea. You're not going to drink hydrogen in just one day and it's just going to make everything better. It doesn't work that way. It's very similar to like having a good diet or exercise. You don't eat clean just one day and expect results. It's a lifestyle. But the beautiful part about hydrogen is just water. How hard is it to drink water? I drink water anyway. And so there's so much interesting power in the water. I have some other videos, you guys can maybe check them out, or maybe I'll put a link below, like what it does to your blood. It's unbelievable, like actual live blood analysis when they use this water, specifically from this device, because this is like the go-to device in Japan. This is what they're using, like I said, in the medical clinics, is this device, because it makes therapeutic grade hydrogen and gas inhalation so you can inhale it. And they both affect your body differently. So like the gas is more for like your brain, because it goes straight to the brain. And the brain's interesting because the brain suffers from a lot of oxidative stress. This is how hydrogen actually works. So they're using it for people with dementia and Alzheimer's, and it works. So that's when you inhale it. It's also good for the eyes when you inhale. It's also good for the spinal fluid. It's also good for your sinuses, your lungs, and the heart. That's one of the other things that was approved in Japan. It was used for the heart, like for people with heart attacks and people with strokes. It's unbelievable what it does for strokes. You want me to explain a little bit about that?
Please, yeah.
Okay, this is interesting. So when people have a stroke, a lot of times they're not getting blood supplied to a part of their brain. And if somebody has a stroke and they go to a hospital, if you don't get blood to a certain area, what happens? I mean, it's kind of in scripture, right? Life is in the blood. So if I cut blood supply off to my arm's gonna die, right? Because it's the blood that's bringing it life. So what hydrogen does is when you're inhaling it, they'll give it as an inhalation in the hospitals. So it'll go to those areas where blood is not getting to, because hydrogen can get in everywhere. There is no place where it cannot get into in your body. And because it's pure life, hydrogen is like just life. When it gets in that area, it will keep the brain alive. So what they do is in ambulances a lot of times, they'll put you on hydrogen gas, they get you to the hospital, they'll get blood supplied back to that area of the brain that didn't have it, and hydrogen kept that area alive, and way over 90% of the people make a full recovery. Whereas normally that part of the brain would die if it didn't get the blood. And then people end up with half of their face doesn't work or half of their body, after a stroke. So this prevents that. And it does so many other things, for my father this is how I not just became convinced about the power, because I read the science and the science is remarkable, but I'd never seen it for myself. My father had arthritis. Really bad arthritis. He had some high blood pressure, little high cholesterol, glaucoma, and he was borderline diabetic, and even had some ganglion cysts. And I got him on the hydrogen and got him off his pharmaceutical drugs. And it did take a little while, but it took about 6 to 8 months of using hydrogen, a proper protocol. And in 6 to 8 months, his arthritis is gone. No more medication needed. Blood pressure, fine. Cholesterol, fine. His ganglion cysts, gone. The only thing that didn't go away in 6 to 8 months was his glaucoma. And this is where the story gets really interesting. This is where I learned, because I've been doing this for years. So this is where I learned something interesting about hydrogen and how to use it properly. My father had to have his eyes checked every year because he has glaucoma. He's had it for over 30 years. So he had to get his eyes checked every year to make sure he wouldn't go blind, because he takes these special drops, for glaucoma. And so the first year, I was thinking, what's going to happen? I was all excited. And he calls me and he's like, they say I still have glaucoma. And I was like, oh, well, it worked for everything else, but it didn't work for the glaucoma is what I thought, right? But he continues to use the hydrogen. So after 2 years of using it, he went back to get his eyes checked, because he does it every year. And he went the second year. And I was kind of excited, like, oh, maybe there's a change, And the doctors told him the same thing. Still have glaucoma, everything's still the same, keep using your drops. So I gave up. I was like, okay, so it doesn't work on glaucoma. Maybe it doesn't work for everything, right? There wasn't actually any scientific data at the time about glaucoma. But here's where it got really weird. On the third year, so he's been using it now all this time, I just gave up. He called me. He's like, guess what? I got a little story for you. And I'm like, what do you mean? What's going on, Dad? And he's like, I just got done seeing my eye doctor. And I was like, yeah, I know. It doesn't work, for glaucoma. And he said, no, they just told me that I don't have glaucoma. And I was like, what? And he told me the doctors were so blown away. They said, it's not possible. So they called him in for another appointment. They said, there's probably something wrong with our equipment. Something's wrong. So they brought him back in. They repeated the test a couple weeks later. Same result. And they were like, this is not possible. Nobody gets old and their glaucoma goes away. The only thing that happens with age is that medical conditions tend to get worse, not better. So they brought him in again. After the third time, they finally said, look, something is obviously wrong. We're going to send you to the #1 specialist. And it took almost 6 months to get the appointment. And they're going to use different equipment, much more specialized, much more expensive. But we got to make sure that you're okay, because we can't just stop giving you medication and then you go blind, right? So he went in there finally when he got the appointment, and he called and he said, what they told me was they were totally blown away. They said that you can barely detect. He said that they just saw the tiniest little thing that he still had the glaucoma, but it was so tiny. It's like having a little speck of skin cancer, like just nothing. They're like, it is so tiny that he doesn't technically need medication I mean, and what I've noticed about hydrogen is that it doesn't work in one day. It's like eating healthy every day.
Yeah.
Remember your cells. I mean, how long does it take for your skin to regenerate? Like 3 to 6 weeks or something. Your whole body to regenerate takes about 7 years?
Oh yeah,
roughly?
for sure. Yeah.
So that's what I've noticed about hydrogen is that it's something that you have to use regularly. The good news is that it's easy. It's just water. You drink water. You do some hydrogen gas inhalation, which is really easy to do. And you just have to do it regularly. And little by little, it begins to have its effects.
It's like a weightlifter. If he does all his weights in one day because he's going to be traveling for the year, you just can't do it. There's no way.
No, you're not going to get...
You have to do a little bit every week.
Exactly. It just takes time. So that's what I've learned. So when I learned that it takes time, then I realized the importance of doing it in a pure way. Because you're going to be putting this stuff in your body all the time. So when you have things like, and I've seen these type of devices, like when you have the hydrogen pills, you don't want to be putting this in your body every day. You just don't want to do it.
No.
And it's actually, ironically, the most expensive way to implement hydrogen. Because although the bottles cost like $50-$60, you got to buy about 1 or 2 of them a month. And if you used it for 3 years, it ends up being very expensive. Yeah, and this,
cheaper to get a machine.
It is cheaper in the long term to do a machine. Kind of like having a good water filter. If you buy bottled water all the time, man, it gets expensive.
Yeah.
But if you have your own water filter, which I do too, it's so much cheaper.
Yeah.
And then there's little devices like these that are made from China. Super terrible. Just stay away from them. They have terrible metal technology.
Yeah.
And when you directly electrolyze the water with bad metals, it'll actually leach the metals into the water. I don't understand why they make a health product that's going to make you sick. It doesn't make any sense. But I've seen it. I mean, a lot of supplements out there are garbage supplements, and they're supposed to be for your health. So it doesn't make any sense. So I've been researching it for, goodness, a very long time, well over 6 years. And my research led me to this. And this was really interesting because Japanese company, and these are the devices they literally use in the medical clinics. And they'll let you know, these guys, I mean, they know what they're doing over there in Japan. And they don't use this crap. They don't use this in the medical clinics. They don't use this stuff. This is actually their go-to device because these devices are also, they do something in this industry that nobody does. They test every single machine. I mean, these things are not only handmade, but they test every single one to make sure that it's making the proper amount of hydrogen. Because another thing that will happen is if you don't make the proper levels of hydrogen, it won't work. So it's like, think of it like a Tylenol or a pill that you take for a headache. If you take the wrong dose, it's not going to really do anything. And it's the same thing with hydrogen. It has to be therapeutic grade. And so this device literally does therapeutic grade water, and even the inhalation is therapeutic grade. And so the inhalation is kind of interesting. You want to see how to do that?
Oh yeah, please. I didn't realize.
Yeah, man, this is so cool. So this is a 2-in-1 unit, which is awesome. Most devices can't do that.
And what's the benefit of inhaling hydrogen? Normally we have oxygen masks. Yeah, oxygen.
Good question, man. This is super interesting, because hydrogen, okay, most people think like, ooh, oxygen. And I was telling you the other day that if you look at water, it's H2 and it's O. And what we're really talking about right now is H2. We're talking about molecular hydrogen, which is H2. And then we have O, which is oxygen. And the thing that I started noticing, because I really think that there is a very deep wisdom to water that we don't completely understand yet. And some Japanese are scraping kind of they're starting to learn, like Masaru Emoto, about learning that water has memory. And there's so many magical things about water. I mean, we'd be lost without water. We wouldn't even be alive. We're primarily made of water. I mean, it's fascinating, right? I mean, really amazing. But when you look at water, one thing that I discovered is I realized it even brought me back to Genesis in Scripture, because it says that you eat of the fruit of knowledge of good and evil. What I began to realize, and please let me know what you think about what I was thinking about, was that good and evil in a way represents life and death. This balance of life and death. And then when I started looking at water, it is literally that. H2 is life, hydrogen. It just brings so much life. Okay, and O, oxygen, is oxidative. It oxidizes. That's what death is, oxidation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And this is interesting. When you die, just like Scripture says, right, you go back to the earth, right? Well, this is interesting. If you fill up a balloon with oxygen and you let go, what happens? It drops to the ground because it's heavy, you know, and it's actually larger than hydrogen. I believe it's like 30-something% larger as a molecule, oxygen compared to hydrogen. But when you fill up a balloon with hydrogen, it rises to the heavens, uprising. That's why, you know, my channel, uprising.
Ascending.
Ascending, that's exactly it.
Okay, so hydrogen is essential material, especially
Exactly.
protium, which is the main isotope of it. Yeah.
That's what we're really talking about.
Yep.
And so hydrogen is really the life molecule. And so if you also think about it this way, you know, oxygen being the oxidant, oxidizing, hydrogen is the antioxidant.
Yeah.
And so here's where the real power comes in. And this is what's interesting. This little pitcher here, which is 1.5 liters, has roughly the antioxidative power of roughly 1,500 apples. I mean, that is nuts. This is like consuming a massive amounts of vegetables. But it's a very unique antioxidant. It's not, did you know that, I don't know if you know this, did you know that antioxidants come in different sizes? So like vitamin C is a certain size, glutathione's a certain size, and if I had a chart for you, you know, they're all like, you know, different sizes, but hydrogen is so tiny. It reminds me of that verse actually that Jesus, where he said the size of a mustard seed, like just this tiny little thing. And we tend to think like, oh, tiny means not as powerful. It makes it the most powerful.
Oh, can I insert something here right now?
Brother. Yeah, brother.
Okay, so the same with light. Okay, so you've got red shift, blue shift. Red wave, very long, low capacitance. Blue, a quick compact frequency, higher capacitance. So
that sounds like hydrogen.
It's the same thing. The smaller with light and elements, the more capacitance. So in the real world, in the spatial world, if you've got a big suitcase, you can carry a lot of stuff. Small one, you're limited, and the capacitance is different in the time-space world.
But it's interesting that you're mentioning this because you were talking about the blue wave. Hydrogen is represented by blue. And oxygen is usually indicated by red because it oxidizes death.
Here's another one.
Fire.
Hydrogen is 1, oxygen is 8. Now, when you know your gematria and your numbers, and you realize what 8 does, it's death, destruction. Because
the serpent, right?
Yeah, the Ouroboros. You see, so oxidization, it has to be 8. Oxygen just has to be, and there it is. And hydrogen has to be number 1. It's the God. It's the God element.
And it's crazy that people have known, some people, not very many, I mean, people like you have known this, but nobody really ever applied it the way that the Japanese have and realized what it does for this temple, this body. I mean, it's amazing. You know, I mean, the things I've been doing it for so many years, and it still doesn't cease to amaze me. The stories I hear all the time, when done properly in a proper protocol, you know, and you do it right, it's just, and understand the science of how it works, and it's just unbelievable. And so anyway, the whole inhalation kit, I won't talk about it a lot, but basically what you would do is you just, and I have other videos on this so you guys can see all the details, but basically you take off this top, and you take out the hydrogen catcher, and you just put this top on instead, and then you just hook up the tubing to this, and you put the headset, and you can just inhale the hydrogen gas. And I mean, some of the weirdest things have happened because, you know, hydrogen, it does give your cells energy. It gives you life. But it's different than like caffeine or a stimulant. It's different because it was really weird how this happened one night. My mother has insomnia. She has a hard time sleeping. She's up at 3 in the morning or whatever, right? And one night, of course, I gave them a hydrogen machine because I want them to be healthy. You heard of all the stuff it did for my dad. And my mom was really skeptical, but as she saw my father improving, she was like, whoa, this stuff really works. Why doesn't the world know about it? You know, it's crazy. So she decided to inhale it one night. And then all of a sudden she just went right to bed. And she couldn't understand why, but she noticed it worked. And so one of the interesting things that I started researching was, I started researching about hydrogen gas inhalation. And here's what I discovered. And I've also come up with some of my own theories because I know that the science will eventually catch up. Your brain suffers from a lot of oxidative stress. I believe it's one of all the organs in the body, it's one of the top ones that suffers the most from oxidative stress. But when you go to sleep, and we all know that sleep is really important, right? When you go to sleep, your body goes through a lot of processes that are very healing. You know, this is why we need it so much, right? But this is what I discovered. If you inhale the hydrogen gas before you go to bed, it will liberate so much of this oxidative stress in your brain. And when you go to bed, your body actually can now run on all cylinders, and you heal better even at night. So you wake up, feeling better, and you get a deeper rest. So it's interesting to me. I think the reason that I think that it can both give you energy but also help you sleep better is because I think hydrogen brings peace to your body. And let me explain why. Because oxidative stress is exactly that. It's like a stress, right? And when your body's stressed, you can't really relax, And when hydrogen goes in, and this is what it actually does, oxidative stress is a form of oxygen. Oxidative stress. And so when hydrogen goes in, which is H2, it has this weird, it's almost like the way it's designed by nature. It wants to bind to that oxygen. So the hydrogen goes in, it binds to the oxidative stress and turns it into water, neutralizes it. And it turns it into water. And so it's not, so like when people's health improves, it's not that hydrogen goes in like a pill and just fixes everything. That's not what it's really doing. It's liberating your body of all this oxidative stress that we get from, pesticides in our foods, just the wrong foods, pollution in the air, stress from work, EMF, whatever, you name it. All this stuff that causes us to have oxidative stress, this helps liberate your body of it. And then your body can now heal on its own because the body was always designed to be able to do that. And the other interesting thing that I've been learning is about hydration. So this is fascinating to me. When people get older, they're chronically dehydrated. It's what happens, as we age. And so when you're not properly hydrated, some of the latest science is showing that your body, even your cells, won't function properly. So you're not running on all cylinders when you're not properly hydrated. Hydrogen appears to hydrate you better than anything known to man. And so not only does it liberate your body of this oxidative stress, but then it turns to water. So you're hydrating yourself from like the inside out, So it brings lots of hydration, and then your body can begin to run on all cylinders again. But it also seems to have a really protective part to it. This is the one that is almost hard to believe unless I saw this for myself. And I've been working with some people who have undergone chemotherapy. And there's a video I have, all my videos are numbered on my channel, and I have video number 8. It shows what chemotherapy does to your cells. And if you were to see let's say these are all your cells, and you give it chemo, they're all gonna go red except for just a little bit, meaning that you're just killing all of them. This is why your hair falls out and you get really sick and you're killing your cells, your life. And then they show footage of somebody who took hydrogen and then they gave the chemotherapy, and you see almost no cell death. It protects your cells that much. And I was working with a guy, this poor guy, he has a child who's been deemed terminal. He's got cancer, it's a very rare form of cancer. And this poor kid, man, some of the things that they've done to him, they put a needle in his back and they put chemotherapy in his spinal fluid. That of course is gonna get to the brain, right? And this is really terrible, but he was telling me that his son just became like a zombie. And he got him home, and luckily he had one of these. And he put him on the inhalation to liberate all the oxidative stress from the brain. Within 30 minutes, he said his son was back. No more zombie, and he was able to function. And they've been giving him all this chemo, and the doctors are blown away because none of his hair's fallen out. They're like, all his hair should be gone by now. He still has all his hair. He's not even getting sick in the treatment, and they're just like, what is going on? And one of the tumors that he had, according to the doctors, it wasn't supposed to have shrunk yet. It takes a certain amount of time before they see the results. It's already less than half the size.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I could just go on and on, man. It's so mind-blowing. In fact, well, go ahead. You have a question?
No, I don't. I'm just absorbing all this because I've heard about hydrogen for years and years and how good it is. And I've tried different ways of taking it in, hydrogen peroxide, in my bath.
That's one of a good question already that you might have just stated, hydrogen peroxide.
Yeah, I've done the protocol where you go up to 30 drops 3 times a day. It helped. I got rid of a lot of.
But I gotta tell you something. This is a big misconception, and people need to know this. It's not actually hydrogen. Hydrogen peroxide is an additional oxygen molecule. It's H2O2. O3 is ozone.
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's an additional oxygen molecule. So the reason that you get benefits from that particular protocol is very oxidizing. So it's death. However, a lot of our problems come from certain types of parasites and bad bacteria and viruses. So you can kill those things and get benefit. However, if you want to enhance that protocol like you wouldn't believe, you actually do hydrogen for about a month and really get it in your system. Then you do something like the hydrogen peroxide protocol, and all that cellular death, but your body's going to be able to withstand all that death, flush it out of the body, deal with it, you'll actually get way better results.
So you have to terrain modify your body. You don't want to be doing something that will be counterintuitive, or it'll cancel out the effect because your body's not ready. I get that.
Yes, your body has to be strong to withstand certain things, and it's the same thing with like even chemotherapy. It's a terrible thing, but if your body has the strength to withstand it, the tumors actually. This is interesting because they were noticing this in Japan. They're using hydrogen with chemotherapy because when you use them together, the tumors seem to go away, or the cancer seems to go away much faster, and they use way less chemotherapy. They don't need to use the normal doses. Yeah. They use way less, and the body reacts kind of like exercise too. When you're exercising, you're tearing down your muscles. It's the recovery where you get strong. What isn't there a saying that says something like, well, it doesn't break you or kill you, makes you stronger?
That's right.
It's kind of like that, but hydrogen gives you more strength so you can withstand more, and then you come out on top. That's why they use it for, here's a really interesting one, they use it for athletes too. In Japan, they did a study where they had all these professional soccer players. They were semi-pro or pro, I don't remember. But when you do a scientific study, if you get like 80% success, the study is deemed a complete success. It's a huge success if you have 80% of the people getting a positive result. When they used hydrogen on these athletes, 100% of them got results, all of them. There wasn't one person that didn't get more results. And that's pretty mind-blowing. I think in the future, you're going to be seeing a lot of athletes using this type of technology. It accelerates the recovery. It helps with all the acidity that happens from exercising. It's really, really fascinating stuff, man. I mean, the thing that just, again, we could go on and on. One of the beautiful things that this does too is the majority, and this might have a lot to do with some of the stuff you've been talking about, the majority of our immune system's in our gut, right? And we're still learning a lot about gut bacteria. Though we are learning that now there's a lot of them that produce hydrogen, right? This whole thing about hydrogen, which is why I do what I call a hydrogen diet. Your gut produces hydrogen when you eat fruits and vegetables primarily. They like the fibers from fruits and vegetables. There's no real fiber in meat, and it doesn't help you produce any hydrogen. So I make these like crazy, I call them hydrogen smoothies. And you guys can check out my video if you want, for those out there who've never seen it. But I show how I make these, and this is what I eat for breakfast and lunch, to get that hydrogen production going. And then of course, I'm always drinking the water and the inhalation. The water, this is another interesting one that you might find interesting. Have you ever heard of ghrelin?
No.
So ghrelin is something that our body produces when we're fasting. So, because there's something very sacred about fasting, right? And you've spoken about it many times, and you know all about the benefits. And there's a ton of science out there about fasting. When you drink hydrogen water, your body goes into like a fasting mode all on its own without you actually fasting. So the benefits that you get from fasting, just from drinking hydrogen water, you can get a lot of those benefits.
Gotcha. Just like hatha yoga and yoga nidra and all the breathing techniques, they say if you do a half an hour of that, it's like 4 or 5 hours of sleep. And I've experienced that many times. It's
absolutely. In fact,
rejuvenating.
I was thinking this, I thought this would be interesting. If you did some of the breathing techniques, have you ever heard of Wim Hof? The breathing techniques that he does?
Yeah.
I mean, and they're scientifically proven. I mean, this stuff's legitimate. I was thinking, use those type of techniques, whether it's Wim Hof or the yoga breathing techniques, when you're doing the hydrogen.
I know. Wow.
I really think that could enhance it too.
Sky's the limit, once you have got such a support for your health, mentally, spiritually, physically, then, you can, all the other things you do, they are enhanced as well. Your sleeping,
absolutely,
your yoga, your meditation, all of a sudden you find that things are easier because
yes,
this basically also eliminates all the nasties like antioxidants. And how does it do with parasites?
So this is really interesting too. They're finding that it has, first of all, like parasites like a very like fungusy environment or yeasty environment. Mm-hmm. Hydrogen actually inhibits growth of all this yeast. Mm-hmm. So it creates an environment where the parasites will not have a very good home, first of all. That's right. So that's important. The other thing is that's really interesting is I was talking about the gut a little bit ago. What this stuff does for the gut is hard to believe. Like I've seen people who were lactose intolerant, and I don't recommend drinking dairy anyway. It's not good for you. But the fact that your body can handle it would be pretty awesome. Mm-hmm. I've known people who could not handle dairy, and after using hydrogen for so many months, all of a sudden they can tolerate it again. It's crazy. It also, for people who are like problems with gluten, also same thing. Because if you have the strong gut and the proper gut bacteria, you should be able to handle certain things. Even if you shouldn't eat them, but if you decide to eat them once in a while, it's nice to know that your body can handle it. So what they've been seeing with hydrogen and the gut, man, it's unbelievable. I actually have a theory that I believe will be proven in the future, very near future, that it's your gut bacteria, they literally eat hydrogen. Because I've been reading other studies where they're actually finding out the bacteria like hydrogen as a food.
The good bacteria.
The good bacteria.
There you go.
Yeah, not the bad ones, because here's an interesting one about like bad bacteria and infections. I knew a lady and she was getting UTIs all the time, these urinary tract infections. I mean, it was a regular thing for her. She'd always have her cranberry juice. She'd get on antibiotics at least a couple times a year. It was all the time. She got on hydrogen, they all stopped. She hasn't got any more UTIs. A couple years now. I think more like 3 years. So it really helps, because infections also correlate with like sugar, because the bacteria is liking sugars. One of the interesting things about hydrogen too is it helps maintain proper glucose levels so you don't get these spikes. So I've known people with diabetes, unbelievable, like their doctors are literally like, this is impossible. Like there was this one lady who was type 1 diabetic, and when she started using hydrogen, she didn't even need to use her insulin anymore. And her doctor just couldn't believe it. I've seen people with type 2 diabetes, it just goes away. Yeah. Type 2 it's like, what? It just goes away.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just, it's been so mind-blowing that the world doesn't know about this. And when we really think about it, we were talking about hydrogen like water, right? H2 and O. Mm-hmm. Look at the sun, right? Because water is amazing, and we need water for life. But without the sun, now what's the sun made of? I mean, dude, it's hydrogen. I mean, there's so much energy in hydrogen, and the interesting thing about hydrogen is that it always wants to go back to the heavens. It's the lightest thing. It'll literally float all the way back home.
Is it the lightest element?
Lightest one I know of.
Yeah.
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 I believe it is the lightest element.
Yeah, yeah. I was just contemplating helium and others, but yeah, hydrogen.
And helium is H3, so it's still hydrogen. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, they use a lot of that stuff for like deep sea diving. So that's how also they've known that it's safe, because people have literally inhaled it for hours and hours and hours, and it's totally safe. In fact, I just noticed that like you can't even overdose on it, which you can overdose on anything. You can overdose on water. I've never seen anything that's so safe that you can't overdose on it. And hydrogen is like that. If your body gets too much of it, it just breathes it out. You never notice.
It's great.
It's crazy. But you'd probably want to get the real high levels of hydrogen would be incredibly hard. And you'd want that anyway. You want to saturate your body with this hydrogen, and then it self-balances out, and just goes out of your body when it doesn't need to be in there. But for the most part, we need hydrogen.
Sure.
So it's been absolutely incredible, man. And it's so awesome that you just happen to connect, and you just happen to be here, and it all just crazy worked out.
You were shocked when you found out I was just an hour and a half down the road from you. Yeah, what are you doing here? I thought you were in Australia.
Yeah, and the fact that I was here too, because I've been all over the place too. And in fact, I'm planning on going to Japan soon.
Well, I'm really glad, brother, because I want me one of these. I know that I can travel with it. I'm going to be doing a lot of traveling. Yeah. So that's a very appealing thing to me. I know that this is the best one on the market. So this is very exciting. I know about hydrogen, and I want to implement this protocol. So hopefully I'm going to afford to get one soon. I know you've been using it for a long time, and I know your results. So why don't we see how it works and how easy it is. I mean, I saw you set this up. I could do this in 5 minutes in a hotel room and then have my dose. And so.
You want me to pour you some water?
Yeah, please. Let's go.
All right, brother. One thing you will notice is it drips a little bit of water because of the way that it makes the hydrogen. But that's part of the design.
Yep, that's cool.
There you go, brother.
All right.
I'm going to see if I got my bottle here. These are pretty cool. This is a special pouch. I have it in a special bag. Maybe this one's better to show. So when you want to take hydrogen with you, because the hydrogen leaves the water, kind of like, I think the best way to think about it is like a soda can or carbonated water. If you shake the water, the gas leaves. Similar with the hydrogen. But the hydrogen is so light, it leaves, the way that this makes it last the longest of any other way that I've seen. Because if you pressurize it, which this doesn't, but if you pressurize hydrogen gas into water, I would say about 80 to 90% of it will leave in like 20 to 40 seconds.
So you can't really buy it at the shops then? You can't?
The best way, and in my opinion, really, the only way to really use it therapeutically, you have to make it yourself. There is really no other way.
Yeah, I get it, for sure.
Because of the levels,
I noticed a kind of, it has that crispiness like not spring water. Yeah, spring water. Like I used to drink water from a creek and back home. Yeah, let's go.
While you're doing that one, I'll show these guys. This is what I use. It's like it's a special pouch that was developed by the Japanese so that you can actually take the water with you and it'll last a while. It's airtight and the material, everything is designed to hold in the hydrogen. There's only one company in the world that makes them. It's crazy. It's a Japanese company, but...
Okay, so does that come with the...
You know what? I had to buy mine separately, but maybe we could contact the company or something.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know what, guys, if anybody out there mention Santos, tell them that you heard about hydrogen from Santos, and maybe we'll get them to give you some type of free gift. I'll call the company or something and see if they'll set something up.
All right. Well, we'll work that out and then put it in the description box
check the description box. Yeah.
Or put it into the editing of the video. But
that's a good idea.
Yeah, that'll be a good idea. So.
So I was gonna explain to Santos what's actually happening in his body when he's drinking this hydrogen, so maybe he can even feel it as it's happening. So when you drink the water, this is how hydrating hydrogen water is. The moment it goes in your mouth, it's already beginning to go into your cells very, very fast. In fact, even as it goes down your esophagus, it's already going in a lot of times before it even hits your stomach. So this is what's interesting. And you could even do your own funny little experiments. You could drink a normal glass of water and you'll feel it in your stomach. You can jump up and down. Sometimes you'll hear the water sloshing around in your stomach. Drink hydrogen water, that won't happen. It's just hydrating, man.
You know what? It's weird. It's weird. As you said that, it felt like it went in and went out that way.
Yeah,
it went that. I didn't feel anything going down.
Isn't that crazy? It goes right into your cells, and it actually is something that the world has really never experienced. It's a selective antioxidant. So it literally is going in your body right now and already selecting, here's oxidative stress, here's bad stuff, and I'm going to liberate your body of it, and it knows which direction to go, because there's certain things that we don't want to antioxidize in the body. We actually need a certain level of oxidation to stay alive.
Yeah.
A certain amount of death, kind of like growing food, you want so much of it to go back to the soil.
Yeah.
And we do this cycle, and the body's very similar. But this hydrogen seems to almost have a mind of its own. It knows this I should antioxidize, this I shouldn't. And it just knows. And even scientists don't understand how it knows it. But it always makes the right choice. It always does what's healing for the body. It'll never hurt you. And it does it really gentle, like really gentle. This is why it takes time, because I've known people who have even people who have high blood pressure problems because they have blockages in their arteries and stuff. This will go up and clean it little by little, but very gently. And I've done so many calls with people who have high blood pressure and they just get off their high blood pressure medication. Just that. You know how many people suffer from high blood pressure in the world? It's crazy, man. The blood pressure issues, people with diabetes, people with cholesterol issues. In fact, here's a really interesting one. This one blew my mind. So many of this stuff blows my mind, but they'll literally take two patients. And one of the patients will have high cholesterol. And one of them will have low cholesterol. And they give hydrogen to both of them, and the one with high will come down, the one with low will come up, and they both come to the healthy balance level. So it does different things for different people based on what they need.
Dosage. It's always
crazy.
about dosage, isn't it?
Well, you give them both the same amount of hydrogen.
Yeah.
But it balances out their body. And one person happened to have, high cholesterol, or you see what I mean?
Okay, I see. Yeah. There you go.
It's so weird.
So if one is
weird.
extreme on the one end, it
Yes.
brings him back and the other as well. Whereas
Exactly.
if you give people, say for instance, just something alkaline, well, it's going to bring them out of balance and
Yes.
bringing them into alkaline state. So it's
Yes.
there's only one way that it can work.
And I'm actually glad that you're bringing this up, because you probably didn't notice, but we should talk a little bit about alkaline water. Because a lot of people think, oh, is this just alkaline water like the water ionizers? It is not. And this is really important to note. Okay, these machines that make alkaline water are actually not good. I know it's going to burst a lot of people's bubbles because a lot of people, I used to have one of those machines. They're like $5,000 or something, or $6,000, and they're actually not good because I did a lot of research and this is what I discovered. Your stomach has acid in it, but it has acid for a reason. That acid is designed to kill bad bacteria before it goes into your GI tract. And also, the acid is designed to break down the food that you're eating so that you can get proper absorption of nutrients. All right, so when you put these alkaline waters in, it disrupts your stomach acids.
For sure.
You don't actually want that.
Like soda water.
Oh yeah, it just messes with your gut, right? Now, pure hydrogen doesn't change pH of water. So if you actually make it properly, which that's what the Japanese discovered. That's why when they developed this device, I mean, this was supposed to be like, their goal was to develop the best hydrogen machine in the world. And they wanted to make it affordable. You know, so that's what they did with this technology. Now, they couldn't do it without a certain level of metal technology. So originally this device was not able to be made, but there was a company, it's the #1 metal company in the world in Japan. They actually make metals for devices that go to outer space. Super high quality stuff. And so when they developed, they were able to develop the metal that this company wanted that was deemed originally impossible. But they were able to accomplish it. It was a huge accomplishment. And that's what they use in this device, so that it will be safe. So that you don't get like leaching metal, because cheap metal will just leach into the water. So you don't want that. And you don't want the pH to change. You want what's called pH neutral.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what hydrogen is, completely pH neutral. And so it doesn't change the pH at all. You can literally drink, you could have some food, and if you wanted to have a sip of water, it doesn't mess with anything. Now granted, some people say you shouldn't drink water with your food, and that's fine, because my personal protocol, the way that I use hydrogen, I drink it on an empty stomach before the meals.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't know that your body utilizes a lot of water to digest meals. And if your body is not properly hydrated when you're eating a meal, your own body will pull the water out of the food before it even makes it all the way down your GI. And you don't want that. If your body's properly hydrated, and this hydrates you better than anything there is, if it properly hydrates you, then when the food goes down, it will not pull the water out of the food, and it allows it to go down your GI and be processed properly.
There you go.
You know, and so it's super exciting stuff. This also is super anti-inflammatory. So so that's why with people with arthritis or inflammation, people don't know that inflammation is the first sign of disease.
Yeah.
You know, like that poor kid who got the chemotherapy to his head, that causes inflammation in the brain. That's why the kid was like turning zombie. He inhaled the hydrogen gas, brings down the inflammation, the oxidative stress. In 30 minutes, he was running around like a normal kid again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Beautiful.
So, yeah, and the inhalation affects you differently.
I'll have another one.
Yeah, man, take it.
That was very enjoyable.
Yeah, right.
That was very hydrating.
And I'll show you how to put it back on here. So this has to line up with this right here.
Yep.
There you go.
There you go.
Because if you set it down wrong, there's certain pins underneath. If you see these little pins, they can bend.
Gotcha.
So you don't want to bend them, you want to light it up just like that. But it's really easy to use. It's just one button. So in fact, you want me to zoom in?
Well, yeah. Let's
I'll zoom in here and bring this a
do
little closer.
the features of the product so that if anyone is interested, there it is, and the name and how to get it, I guess.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, so this is actually really important. Let me see here. You really want to make sure to get an authentic one. What's kind of crazy, I don't know who's doing this. I don't know if it's in China or whatnot, but there are actually some places, like I said, I don't know who's doing it. They're making fake ones.
Yep.
And so a product that's not authentic is not a good idea because they're utilizing a very specific metal technology. And it's not just the metal, the whole thing. There's so many important parts to it, from what this is called, it's a special DI filter, and you really need the proper one also. And you really just need something that's truly authentic. And so maybe we'll put a link below, but the only company right now, at least that has these, this is another important thing, international models. So when they originally designed this machine, this is interesting. When they originally designed this machine, it was intended only for Japan. They were never going to sell it outside of Japan because they didn't think that anybody in the world really understood hydrogen. They're like, the world doesn't understand hydrogen. We're just going to do it for the Japanese people. And that's what they did. But then the demand, because I found out about it, I'm like, I want one. So when I found out about it, also a lot of other people found out about it, and they started getting orders around the world. And then what ended up happening, though, is that the machine wasn't designed to be used outside of Japan. Because in Japan, they have the most stable electrical grid system in the world. And so they had to build what's called like an international model. And so this model is an international model. So you want to make sure to get that one because apparently they're more expensive to build. They're more robust in order to withstand being used anywhere in the world. But that's really important because if you don't live in Japan, they literally have in the fine print on the Japanese models. They say if you use it outside of Japan, the warranty's void. But this one, you get the warranty anywhere in the world. So that's pretty cool. So you definitely want that. The place where I got mine is from a place called Holy Hydrogen, which I just love the name.
Oh, let me say that. Holy Hydrogen. Now, once people see the presentation I did in your town, Portland, last week on the weekend, where I called it Hail Sol Invictus, I really expounded on this beautiful word, holy. And I agree.
Oh, man.
Hydrogen is holy. It is. It's
super
it's
pure.
It's the water of life, for sure.
Water, that's exactly what a lot of people
Holy
are saying.
hydrogen.
Water of life.
Love it.
I know, I love that name too. And that's where you can really get like an authentic unit. That's where I got mine.
And that's the name of the company,
That's
right?
the name of the company,
Well,
man.
wow. That's
I know.
so good.
I thought it was serendipitous too. When I found the device, I'm like, wow, holy, because that's actually the way I looked at hydrogen. I looked at it very like sacred and holy, and it does all these amazing things for us. It literally gives us life. I mean, the sun, again, mostly hydrogen, and obviously water. I mean, we need these things for life. You should see what it does for plants.
Man, it might sound like I'm exaggerating or just being, excited here, but this feels good.
Oh.
It really feels nice. It's beautiful water, and I'm feeling, nice,
Your body's probably been like craving it.
Wow.
Our body wants it so much, and we really are deficient in hydrogen most of the time, most of us. And so this brings you back up. There's a specific protocol that I kind of created for myself based on all the numbers. So there's a lot of science. I don't want to like geek out on everybody and bore everybody to death, but exactly the amount of hydrogen that this makes, and if you use it a very specific way, you'll bring your body up to what it was designed to have, ideally. And that's when you really begin to see the changes. So we can go into more detail sometime if you want, or I can tell you off camera, too, or on camera, whatever, exactly how I use it. But it's pretty detail oriented, but it's easy. That's the good news. It's super easy.
So when you pick this up and open up the box, it's pretty straightforward. You don't need to be technically minded or...
Not at all.
It's
easy, man. The Japanese, one thing that I love that they did here is they made it easy.
Yeah.
I've seen other hydrogen devices that are really not as good, but I was researching all this for years, so I've actually owned a lot of different kinds, and some of them are just incredibly complicated. And I mean, so complicated that it's like, who's going to use this? Or they're really big and super heavy.
What's the weight of this unit?
This thing weighs under 6 pounds.
Yeah.
I mean, here, in fact,
wow.
Here, let me grab the box. Let me zoom back out here so you can, we'll talk about more of the details on the machine in a second, but let me grab the box so you can see exactly how big it is.
Yeah, that's...
Because I brought it over here today. And man, it was easy.
Yeah, it's very doable, 6 pounds. I think I was a 9-pound baby when I was born, so...
This is how big the box is. It's small. The Japanese are all about compact.
Chisai.
Yep, which means small in Japanese.
Chisai no koto.
Yeah, brother.
They love it.
So yeah, they wanted to make it, again, it was for Japanese market, and to really see a device that can do therapeutic grade gas and water in this size, it's unheard of. Like this is crazy. And so it's really easy to carry, and it's easy to use. Like I can show you, like if you want to shut it off, you just hold the button and it shuts off. It takes 30 minutes to fill it up with hydrogen. So if you just hit it once, it counts down.
Yeah, I noticed the 30 there, and I thought, well, what sort of settings? What are all these settings? And it's basically not settings. It just does it all for you.
Just one button, and it'll in 30 minutes it'll fill it up completely with hydrogen. But right now it's already filled up with hydrogen, obviously. So after it's done filling with hydrogen, it goes into another mode, and you can go there automatically by holding on the button, and it goes to zeros, and that's actually standby mode. And what standby mode does is it trickles in hydrogen little by little, so it maintains the level, because you know it's leaving all the time.
So you can have that on all day.
Exactly.
Like your coffee, you just sit on a glass. Right?
Yep. It's like coffee that's staying warm for you all the time.
Yeah.
It's always ready to go. You want another glass? I mean,
Sure.
I'll keep pouring it for you, man.
This is just really nice.
And if you notice, I try to pour real smoothly like that.
Yeah.
So that the hydrogen, you know, the rougher you are, the more the hydrogen leaves.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
So, like, even right now, if you were to chug that water, you'd be getting all that hydrogen, you know, because it's leaving little by little.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is interesting. Little fun little facts. The way that this machine makes the hydrogen lasts the longest in the water than I've ever seen from any other device. So, if the glass was sitting like that and wasn't moved at all, if it was just sitting there in a room that's 68 degrees, all the hydrogen will be gone in 1 hour. But 1 hour is like pretty amazing, actually.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you normally can't do that. And then if you were to put it in one of these, if you were to put this water in one of these special pouches that were developed by this Japanese engineer who used to work at NASA, if you put it in one of these and you put this bag, it seems counterintuitive, but if you put it sideways because of the water pressure and you put it in the refrigerator, it will hold over 90% of the hydrogen for 1 to 2 weeks. So you can store this stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, so this is the high-end technology here, is it? In this.
Yeah. So this is okay. So here, let's talk about what makes hydrogen leak. This is interesting. Holy hydrogen.
Holy hydrogen.
So the things that make hydrogen leave is one, when it's exposed to the air. So see your glass right now, it's exposed to the air. If I were to open this and there's water in here, the hydrogen would leave, you know, little by little, you know. So that's one thing that makes hydrogen leave. So if you had hydrogen in a normal water bottle, hydrogen water, or even normal water, if you move that water bottle, you're going to hear the water sloshing around, which is the second thing that makes the hydrogen leave, is movement. So just like a soda can, if you shake it, the gas leaves, right?
Sure.
That's why when you open it, it's like, psh, you know, the gas leaves. So movement also makes the hydrogen within the water leave. So the reason that this device is designed the way it is you take the big cap off, you pour this hydrogen water in it till it's full, and I could do a demonstration if you wanted a second, and then you seal it. It's got a gasket on here, and then you take off this little cap, and what you do is you squeeze the remaining air, and when the air comes out, it's completely airtight. There is no air in there, so when there's no air in here, the water won't slosh around. It's kind of like like floating in space.
What's that? A half a liter?
This is actually about 1 liter.
Oh wow!
And you can fit about 1.2 if you really push it in there.
So there's a tube going right down.
Yeah, there's something in there. This is
Okay.
This was patented, and there's only one company in the world. There's this Japanese company that makes these, and also so it's airtight so that it won't move.
Mm-hmm.
When you take off the little cap and you pour water, you know, when you pour water out of it into a cup, no air will ever get in.
Yeah.
So it's designed so that air won't get in, so that way it won't slosh around and the hydrogen won't leave. And it's designed, the material, it's got all these special layers of almost like a flexible type of aluminum. But the inside is lined with something else so that you don't get aluminum in your water.
Yeah.
Obviously, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, because that's the only thing that helps contain the hydrogen for a certain amount of time. Eventually it does get out, but it makes it last much longer, so you can take it with you places. Whether it's the gym, whether you're gonna go see friends, whether you go to work and you want to take it with you, because sometimes you can't take the machine with you to work.
No.
Right. So this is a good way, and you can just take it with you wherever. But it looks like a space bag, huh?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
But they're great, man. I love these things. And then these are hard to find though. These are from Japan too. Is just a container. I like having them in these little bags.
Yeah.
Because it protects them. Because if you hit something sharp, sometimes you could puncture your pouch.
Right.
So when I have it in these, well, I won't put it back in this one, but you can see this one. It protects it.
Oh yeah.
I've dropped it before. I've nicked it against stuff, and nothing happens. Plus these little things are insulated, as you can kind of see. But yeah, man, it was so cool because I almost wondered if this had anything to do with like the age of Aquarius. I wondered about this because I thought maybe we're going to be learning more and more about the power of water. Even like Atlantis was based somehow on water, right?
Sure.
And I actually think that hydrogen is not only good for your health. I mean, yeah, it's amazing for your health, but we have so much of it. It's like the most abundant thing in the universe, and it's full of energy. You know, people don't realize, it's kind of interesting. I always notice how hydrogen always goes back to the heavens, you know, because it's so light and it just floats back home. Even rockets that we sent to outer space, they can't get there without hydrogen. And a lot of people don't know this, that if you've ever seen the ice falling off of one of these rockets, it's because they have to cool it down to make the hydrogen a liquid, like liquid hydrogen. And there's so much energy in hydrogen that it powers, you know, something like this rocket. If you fill it up with gasoline, you'd never make it out of orbit, man. It would never happen.
Well, it got into the big bomb, didn't it? The hydrogen bomb. So that
there you go. You know, that's and obviously the hydrogen, you know, the hydrogen bomb, but they use it because there's so much energy. It's so powerful. And one of the beautiful things about this is that we can use that hydrogen for our body. It gives us power. It gives our cells energy. It protects us. It heals us. One of the really interesting things that I recently learned too was about glutathione. Glutathione is a natural antioxidant that our body makes. Okay, it's bigger than hydrogen. It's not as good as hydrogen, but our body utilizes it to protect us in a very similar way that hydrogen does. It's kind of similar. The interesting thing about glutathione is a lot of people try to supplement it. It's not very good. It's better for you to make your body to make its own, you know, glutathione. But the reason that I'm bringing it up is because one thing that the Japanese noticed is that people who are sick, like people who have cancer and all this stuff, they did an interesting study in Japan and noticed that almost all of them are deficient in glutathione. And I think that the reason that this happens is because anytime you're exposed to something, radiation, pollution, these things, your body has to protect itself. And it uses glutathione, this antioxidant, to protect itself in the same exact way that hydrogen also protects us. Now, this actually does a better job even than glutathione, in my opinion, but your body will use this. But check this out. Then they start noticing that when you use hydrogen water, guess what it does to your natural glutathione levels?
Okay.
It brings them to the healthy levels. So it helps almost like train your body to be able to protect itself too. So even though hydrogen will only stay in your body, like when you're drinking this hydrogen, it will be in your body for between like 1 to 4 hours, okay? But the scientists have noticed that when you take it in and you get the benefit, even though it's out of your system, you'll still see benefits weeks down the road. And I think that the reason this is happening, because nobody really knows why, but I believe that the reason this is happening is because it liberates your body of the oxidative stress. It starts bringing balance back to your body, your natural glutathione levels. And when your body's running on all cylinders again, then it has this prolonged effect on your body, you know, of wellness.
For sure. It's like a support. Could you say it's an adaptogen? Because you were saying before how it given to people with excesses on one end of the scale and the other heals both. Right, extreme. So that would be like an adaptogen.
Yeah, I would say yes. One of the interesting things about what you just brought up, going back to the glutathione thing, if somebody has too low of glutathione, it's bad. If people have too much, it's actually not good for you either. Life is always about balance, right? And the reason that this was interesting was because when they use hydrogen, it will literally bring down or bring up on the glutathione also and bring you to nice homeostasis.
There you go.
So I think maybe it could be that, I mean, it certainly adapts to its environment. I've certainly noticed that. So just super fascinating.
Very nice, Interesting.
There was one guy, this is kind of weird too, like people who get sick on boats, like motion sickness. You know, they say it has to do with your ears sometimes. Sometimes they don't know exactly why some people get sick. This one guy got on hydrogen after, I think it was 3 or 4 months. He got on a boat and he was expecting to get sick. He took some pills that he normally has with him. And he thought he'd just wait until he started getting sick to take his pills because he wanted to see if he could handle it. And he didn't get sick. And he wrote me an email. People are always writing me the different experiences with hydrogen. And it's like, what? All of a sudden he doesn't get sick on boats? It's like, how did hydrogen do that? It's crazy. There's so many things. You know?
So it supports all other things, really, doesn't it? And it enables them. It's like, you know, the good servant who goes around fixing things, and no one really, he doesn't want attention, but he just knows what to do, and very handy enabler of, you know, everybody else's
Humble,
processes. So
hardworking.
yeah, and just think about it. It have to be because it's the number one element in the universe. It's the most available, and so why wouldn't you, take it in? Yeah.
I know. Isn't it weird? I mean, when I start understanding and learning it, I just started wondering to myself, like, why did it take so long? Like, why didn't any of us think about ever using it medicinally?
Mm-hmm.
We never thought about it.
Yeah.
Like, nobody thought. I never thought about it. More people thought about using oxygen medicinally.
Yeah.
Like, oh, let's use oxygen. And I should probably share one of the dangers of oxygen therapy. Okay, this is interesting because a lot of people are always like, well, what about oxygen? What's better? Hydrogen's way better. I mean, it hands down works better. Are there benefits to oxygen? Yeah, there's some benefits to it, but you have to learn how to use it. So let me explain. Okay, have you ever seen like a professional athlete that wants to use, oxygen therapy to improve his performance, right? Ironically, he does the opposite of what you would think. Instead of giving himself extra oxygen, he does the opposite. He gives himself less. Like high altitude training, that's what they do.
Right.
And it's less oxygen. Why are they doing less oxygen?
Yep.
So I should explain this to you, right? This will be really interesting.
Please do.
All right.
Please excuse me.
Oh, no.
I'm enjoying this.
Yeah. And I wish I had a glass, but it's okay. I drank a lot of it before we got on camera. So when you limit the oxygen in your body will adapt. And so it adapts by producing more red blood cells because it needs more of them to absorb the readily available oxygen in its environment. So then you have all these additional red blood cells. And then when you come down to normal altitude, like let's say you play a basketball game, and now you're normal altitude with everybody else, and you're breathing in normal amounts of oxygen, but you have excess red blood cells now. So now you can take in more. So that's how you use oxygen therapy. You actually limit the oxygen, and you would do training like that. And periodically you can boost your oxygen, like supplement it, but you would only want to do it for about 3 days at a time. So you do it for 3 days, you go off of it for maybe a couple weeks or a month, and then you do it for 3 days. And the reason is because if you give yourself extra oxygen all the time, your body will adapt. And it will adapt by making less red blood cells.
There you go.
So when you get off the oxygen, now you can't absorb enough oxygen in your normal environment. You don't want to do that. But here's a super interesting thing about the relationship between oxygen and hydrogen. Just like water, H2O, right? Oxygen comes from the outside. So you're inhaling between a ratio of about 20 to 23% oxygen at any given time in your atmosphere, okay? There's really no hydrogen in the air, by the way.
I thought about that. Nitrogen's 78.
Yeah, I mean, you're not really getting, you're not getting just about any hydrogen in your air, okay? But here's the weird thing. So you get the oxygen from the outside. Where do you get your hydrogen? You actually make it in the inside of you. You make your own hydrogen in your gut. So it's weird because you don't produce your own oxygen. You bring it in from the outside. So it's like the death, I know that we need some of it, and oxygen's important, but it's coming from the outside, and the hydrogen has to be made, cultivated in the inside. But now there's a way that we can, quote unquote, supplement it, which is you dissolve it properly in water or you make the gas. But in the end, the real magic, I mean, yes, the machine is super cool. The metal technology is unbelievable.
Is that where it's being generated from, the metal? How is it generating oxygen?
Hydrogen.
Sorry, yeah. Of course.
So you pour water in this area, and this will go underneath. That's why it drips, because the water goes down here, okay? And then the device will actually, so then what the device does is it extracts the hydrogen from the water. So that's why I was talking about the whole Age of Aquarius thing, is because we're realizing the true power, it's in the water, but it's locked in there like a lock, like a key, or a lock without a key. You can't really, when you drink water, you're not actually getting all that hydrogen because it's already bound to oxygen. So it goes in your body and it can't attach itself to any of the oxidative stress because it's already attached to oxygen. So what this does is it unlocks it in a very safe manner, because the science of how the whole device works is actually quite complicated, from the way the specific amount of electrical current to separate them, and to do it in a way where there's no toxicity, usually when you make hydrogen in different ways, like I was saying, like these devices or like the pills, they leave a toxic residue.
Right.
These will leave like a metal residue. And so the Japanese knew that it was important that you didn't leave any residue. You just wanted like the pure nectar, you know, with no other residues. And that's why they developed, you know, this. But the true magic's actually the water. So that's why I always tell people, like, if you're going to use hydrogen therapy, you want clean water. Like I've had people who contact me and they're like, oh, I got one of the devices and they're using tap water. I'm like, what are you doing? I mean, do you have any idea what's in your tap water? It's crazy. You know, so you want to filter your water. You want clean water. That's why we have, you know, like these jugs with clean water, you know?
I used to distill my water, right? I just want to insert this just to show you how bad tap water is, okay? So I was up in Queensland using rainwater, tank water for my distiller, okay? 4 litre unit, benchtop 4 litre unit. I was always drinking distilled water.
Me too.
After one go, and you've got your gallon of water, you would have to wipe the bottom of the distiller, right? Now I would wipe like a 1 cent piece in area and very, very thin. I just have to do that, and that was all the rubbish that was in the rainwater.
Yeah, minor.
I moved down to Victoria from Queensland to my mother's place, and she's got this $600 water filter to filter her town water. So I would get that water to put in my distiller.
The filtered water.
The filtered water.
Yep.
I was shocked. Not even the filtered water gets all the gunk out, brother.
Oh, no.
You know, it was just full white, full of rubbish.
Yep.
And I destroyed my distiller, basically. I can never... Within a week, I just couldn't scrape it hard, and I'd sit there for about 10 minutes trying to scrape all that gunk off, and it's just forget it.
You have to use like citric acid to clean the distillers. Because I have a few distillers too. And you actually have to use, I have a link on some of my videos. There's a special citric acid you have to use to maintain this device too.
Okay.
One of the interesting things about this particular device that I found super fascinating is that it will expose bad things that are in your water.
Yeah.
You know, you'll start seeing it on the panel build up, and you're like, what is this? You know, and it's something that's in your water that's causing this. And then when I use distilled water, it runs beautifully.
There you go.
You know, it runs better with, the cleaner the water is, the better it runs. Yeah. I even noticed one really interesting thing. This was quite a while ago, but it was so hilarious. Because I was tasting something funny in the water but only when I would run it through my machine. So if I just drank this water, I thought, it tastes fine. But when I ran it through the machine, I would taste it even more. And I thought this was really odd. So I contacted the company, and they contacted their engineers and some of their scientists, and I learned something really interesting about hydrogen. Hydrogen gas is interesting because it's similar to the gas in soda pop. You know, have you ever drank soda pop that's flat? You know, and it tastes different, right? The gas actually brings a flavor out. Yeah. So when I was drinking this water that tasted funny, they're like, it's not the machine, it's the water you're using. And the hydrogen gas is bringing out flavors within the water. And I was like, what? And it turns out that the filter I was using was past due. You had to it was due for a filter. So this was exposing that there was stuff in my water that shouldn't be, which was pretty cool, because I was like, oh, I know I need to change the filter, but it really exposes the quality of water that you're using. I had somebody contact me who thought they were using distilled water. They were purchasing water from the store, and it was tasting a little funny, and they were seeing some buildup on the machine. And then I was like, whatever you're using, it can't possibly be truly distilled water. And when they did more research and they looked at the label, they thought they were buying distilled water, and it wasn't. So the machine showed them, you know. So it's just, it's very interesting, very fascinating. But man, it was so exciting that I got to connect with you, and that we got to talk about, you know, almost like the spiritual aspect too. That is one thing that I've really learned about life. I mean, I think, wasn't it even Jesus who said something like, I'm the way, I'm the truth, I'm the life. You know, it's funny, a lot of people think he said light, but if you look at the writing, he said life. You know, and I mean, hydrogen's everywhere. I mean, it's in the plants, it's in the grass, it's in the trees, it's in animals, it's in us. I mean, it's everywhere. Every living thing, has hydrogen in it, one way, shape, form, or another. It really is like this life-giving molecule. And water being at the source of everything, it's literally the life, 2 parts life, H2, and then 1 part death, oxygen.
Yeah, there you go.
But together, they're both gases. But together, they create something that's physical, water. And we're physical, and we're primarily made of water. Granted, we have the spirit, also. But it's so interesting how it really comes into play. And I think it's really going to come into play in the future, not just for health, not just for fitness and athletics, which it's amazing for those 2 things, but also for energy. I believe it's the way for us to have an abundance of clean energy for the world.
Yeah, for sure. Imagine what they're doing with cars. They can run cars on this with hydrogen.
Absolutely. You don't have to even buy all this new technology. There was a guy making cars in the 80s. You can convert any car. Like, I don't know, do you like classic cars?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, me too, man. I mean,
some sure.
Old Jags, 69, Chevelle SS, muscle cars.
They look so good.
Yeah, man.
So
they look great. They're fun. They're classic. They're even a little bit of our history, And you can convert those cars to run on hydrogen. So you can still have the blah, 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 and,
for sure.
And you're not hurting the environment.
That's right.
You know what I mean? The only thing that comes out the tailpipe is water.
Yeah.
You could probably drink it.
Yeah. For sure.
But I think it'd be super awesome to be able to do that, because one of the other things I was noticing too is I know that the Japanese developed a lot of fuel cell technology. So this is interesting. I was thinking, how right now the big thing about energy is how do we store it? So everybody's really talking about battery technology. And battery technology we still have a long ways to go to improve on battery technology, because we have trouble storing energy.
Yeah.
But here's the thing about hydrogen that's so beautiful. They have special tanks. You can store hydrogen. It's not high tech. You just need these special tanks where you can put the hydrogen in. And people will be like, yeah, but my house doesn't run on hydrogen, right? Well, if you have an electric stove, if you have an electric heater, anything that's electric in your home, and you can pretty much have most things run on electric, you get a fuel cell that uses the hydrogen and converts it to electricity. I mean, there was this one guy on the internet who was doing craziest thing. He had a little solar panel, and the solar panel was separating the bond of oxygen and hydrogen, and it would take a while, hours and hours and hours, but eventually the whole tank would be filled with hydrogen. He was using it in his car. This guy, if you guys ever want to look it up, his name is Bob Lazar, I believe.
Oh, Bob Lazar, there you go. Yeah, for sure.
He was the guy who was running these cars on hydrogen, and the only reason that we weren't able to do, because he was building a kit that you could make your car so you could convert it, so that your car could run on both hydrogen or gasoline, whichever one you wanted, depending on what you had access to. But one of the ingredients that he needed, they made it illegal. So that way, without that one ingredient, you couldn't make any of it work. It's like they're always trying to hold us back.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm just thankful for the internet. So people can hear the word. And also so we can share, because people don't know what the best way to use hydrogen is or the best way to make it, and it's something that I've dedicated a huge part of my life. So I can educate. So that way when people contact me and say man, this was amazing, this was so good for my health, just like when you share your stuff, and we all love hearing your stuff too. It's amazing. And it helps us, it helps educate. We all need to be bouncing ideas off, we all have different quote unquote expertise and different knowledge, and we should be able to share it together, all in the name of goodness, so that we can rise up, and rise up from amongst the dead,
Yeah.
And I really think that obviously, I think that's what also changes the world.
Yeah.
We have to, because we're the ones in control here, right?
For sure.
So
and we are hydrogen bombs.
Yeah, we are hydrogen machines. We are hydrogen generators, man.
For sure.
And one of these days, I think even maybe you could even shed some light on this, for us to light up, I think has something to do with hydrogen.
By the way, do you know what the gen is at the end of hydrogen? And oxygen?
No.
Generate, obviously.
Oh.
To generate hydrogen.
There you go, man.
Yeah.
Hydrogen, oxygen. That's awesome, man. You're so good at that part. You're so good at the word.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I did a whole I think it's an hour and a half presentation on the periodic table, and I brought some of these things out, and I brought out all the interesting things about the numbers of the elements. For instance, if you add up the 4 elements which our body's made up, 97% of our body, hydrogen, oxygen, carbon and nitrogen, 1, 6, 7 and 8 on the periodic table, that's 22. Catch 22. It's a Kabbalistic number, and it's quite appropriate that those add up to 22, you know, because there are 22 amino acids. There's so many things having to do with 22 that it just can't be, you know, just a, well, it's just fascinating at the least that those numbers of the 4 elements that make up pretty much the universe and your body come up to 22. I see all the numbers of the periodic table as very, very significant. Walter Russell said that they're not particles, because particles don't exist. They are frequencies. So when, for instance, hydrogen becomes helium or whatever because of interaction, you know, with ionic bonding and everything, I don't see it as giving or taking electrons and particles. I see it as one atom bumping up into another atom, and that's how it works. We are both anatomies. So when we come into contact with each other, we change each other's frequency. That's all it's doing, because it's all frequencies. All the elements are frequencies. So how can they be giving electrons and taking electrons and making isotopes all throughout the universe? Walter Russell explained it, you know. They just come together, change so carbon becomes, say, I don't know, nitrogen in this exchange. So when, they obviously just, they're all different set frequencies, you see.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so everything's an atom, all atoms, you know.
Atoms, yeah. Man, that is so interesting. When you're talking about that, oh, go ahead.
No, it's go, you go.
Oh, I was going to say, because the whole donation of electrons, that's one of the ways that the scientists are trying to explain hydrogen. Because H2 goes in and it can somehow donate an electron. You know, so actually they have shown some research about how it keeps your DNA more intact. So keeping it from falling apart. You know, which leads to all sorts of other problems. And so they're saying that that's one of the powers, because not only does it donate an electron, but sometimes when an antioxidant does that, it itself can become something harmful possibly in the body. So an antioxidant that converts to something else that is maybe not good for you, but hydrogen will not do that.
That's right.
Hydrogen will donate that electron, but it will still be something that won't harm you. You know, so that's why it's the best antioxidant there is.
That's what I was going to say. Maurice Cotterell. Maurice Cotterell is from Ireland, and he's a scientist. He's got many books, he's got videos on YouTube, and he explains in one video that hydrogen is the only atom that spins perfectly. All the others have wobble. From helium down, they're all wobbly.
Really?
He's discovered in his many years of science, he said, so it's got that
super
perfect
balanced
spin. Hydrogen, it is special.
It definitely is special. I just can't believe that it does what it does to our body. I mean, who would have guessed it? I mean, who would have guessed? I would have never guessed it.
Yeah.
You know, I still remember years ago reading the first articles about it. I just thought I thought it was a scam. I'm like, this can't be real. It's too good to be true.
I know.
You know, and then it took me about 3 years of reading about it. I wouldn't try it. For 3 years, reading, and I was like, okay, this is too good to be true. And then the question became to be, how much do you need? How do you make it? And that's where I began to go down a whole other road.
But this makes it easy, because you don't have to worry with all these parts and everything, and you've got this cumbersome machine at home. You can't travel with it. This is the travel companion, which is for me.
I'll just carry it like this.
Yeah, and well, I mean, 6 pounds, and it has all the specifications, and it absolutely makes it clear with once you research it how it is the best on the market. So, you know, puts all that to ease. You know, for someone like me that has a very busy life and everything, you know, I just can't be messing around with that. So this is great for me, brother. Great.
The amount of work to figure out what the best is, oh man, years of hours upon hours of research. I ended up becoming almost like a kind of an expert in hydrogen. And I didn't really necessarily want to, and it wasn't really but I felt like I had to if I wanted to learn about it. And nobody on the internet, I should make sure the phone still recording, because, oh yeah, it's still going. You know, there was nobody on the internet talking about it. And nobody that really was explaining how to do it properly. Nobody. And that's why I actually started my channel, because seeing what it did for like myself, my family, and I was like, I gotta show, I had hoped that somebody had made a channel like this. I would have been watching, but instead it ended up being me. I ended up starting to talk about it. But I'm really glad that we were able to connect, because this is so
very
awesome.
fortuitous, I'll tell you. I mean, it was quite serendipitous. I'm really glad, because I've always wanted to do something, I like to add health protocols in my work. I can't ignore it. I've always been on the case of health. My mother, I was raised a Jehovah's Witness, and my mother was very, very, very health conscious. We were not allowed to have, I used to love Juicy Fruit, Wrigley's Juicy Fruit chewing gum, so I used to have to buy them sneakily and put them on top of my wardrobe. And just because Mum insisted, we used to have brown, organic bread, and everything was healthy, grown at home, and so
that's nice though. You probably appreciate it now.
Yeah, I appreciate things like this so much.
Oh man, here's an interesting thing, and see what you think about it. We'll just talk openly. You know how in Japan they discovered that you can like talk to water, and they can measure that it responds, even just thoughts about the water. Sometimes they play music and put images. This whole scientist that kind of discovered that water has a form of memory, right? But the same thing goes for plants. Have you ever heard of people who are really nice to the plants, and the plants respond?
I've seen all that.
It happens, right? And the same thing with people. If I say nice things to you, if I say something mean to you, you feel it. Yeah. Your stomach can get like this. Yeah. It doesn't feel good, right?
That's right.
And so words do have a certain power, right? And it's a frequency. It's a vibration, right? Yeah. That's why sometimes we say, oh, we like their vibe, right? Their vibration, right?
Yeah.
And so what I started thinking about was, what if it's the hydrogen within these things that's actually responding? And so if it's hydrogen within the plants, hydrogen within the person, hydrogen within the water, because it's everywhere, it's in everything.
Yeah.
And so when this has excess hydrogen, because it has more hydrogen than the norm, because we've infused it with hydrogen, I started noticing that I started having like a very deep gratitude for the people who developed this device. Like I heard some interesting stories. Like one of the guys who worked on this project, his daughter has ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. They told him that his daughter would be dead by the age of 5 or before. She wouldn't make it past 5, is what they told him. And she would get chronic lung infections. She'd have a lung infection like every 1 to 2 weeks. It was terrible. And, she was in really bad shape. But he was also learning about hydrogen. And he started putting her on hydrogen gas inhalation for her lung infections. And her lung infections stopped. She stopped having them. So when he was one of the guys who was involved in this project, he was so adamant about making the best hydrogen machine in the world, you know what I mean? And so not only was it was only originally supposed to be a water machine. It wasn't going to make the gas inhalation. But he said, it has to have a gas inhalation option, because I've seen what it does for my own daughter. The science on it is pretty clear. It obviously works. And it cost them a lot more to do it, and it took a lot more research. Part of the way to be able to do it was actually this thing right here. The inhalation wouldn't work without this technology right in here, and they had to invent it. Like nobody made, what it needed to do it right. And so he wanted the machine that could offer both, and you can have it at home, and it's just small, it's light, it's easy to set up. You don't have to have it hooked up to the pipes like your plumbing and overly complicated,
Gotcha. That's what I mean. What I mean. This is just so good for someone like me, even home users, to know that they can go and visit their family and share this water with them. They can take it wherever they go, So it's very affordable.
Yeah, I think so.
So when we have the link on the description, people can go and check the price, and if it's affordable, they can get one,
absolutely. It's a no-brainer, too, for health. Hydrogen's a no-brainer. But I was going to mention this to you. Have you heard of a place called Lourdes, France?
Of course, Lourde.
Lourde?
Yeah.
Now, did you know that, now I'm sure you've heard of the miracles that happen from the water there?
Yeah.
Guess what the Japanese discovered? That water has high levels of molecular hydrogen. It's the same freaking thing. So what they did is they were studying, it was the Japanese who discovered this. They actually were testing that water. And American scientists has actually gone, and they couldn't detect it because hydrogen is so tiny. They're like, there's no difference in this water. We don't notice anything. It's H2O. And eventually, because the Japanese are so detail oriented, and they didn't give up. The American scientists just left. They're like, there's nothing special about this water. The Japanese kept at it. And eventually they discovered this thing has high levels of molecular hydrogen. But it's interesting because they kind of said to themselves, like, why would that do anything? They couldn't understand, because it was always thought of as an inert gas. It doesn't do anything type of deal, you know? So then when they went to Japan and they started making hydrogen and they started giving it to animals, and then they started seeing what it was doing to the animals. They started with mice. And they were like, you should see, I have footage. I think I have some videos with some footage. They literally will take like 2 sets of mice, 2 in each cage. They'll give them both chemotherapy, actually, like radiation. But they'll give these guys hydrogen water, and the other guys they'll just give normal water. And the ones that got the normal water are sitting in a corner, like, and they're barely moving and they're super cold, because there's a correlation between your core body temperature and health. And by the way, this brings up core body temperature. Right. It's pretty interesting. I got some thermal imaging pictures from a medical clinic in Japan that uses this device. And the thermal imaging shows that it increases core body temperature, which gets lower and lower as you age. So there's a correlation between core body temperature and health.
So colder is older.
Pretty much. And then the mice that had the hydrogen water, they were also exposed to the chemotherapy, the radiation. They were running around and pooping everywhere, and they were very active, and you can see it. And that's how it all began. It really started many years ago, but France, and there's a few other places on the planet that have this healing water. There's a place called Tlacote in Mexico. They also have the healing waters of Tlacote. And they have people lined up for the water, but they didn't know that it was actually the hydrogen. They just knew that it worked. You know? And there's one other place in Germany. So there's like 3 places that have been discovered on planet Earth that has this natural hydrogen. And some people ask too, like, well, is it dangerous? Is it flammable? So the Japanese actually made this machine a very specific way. In order for hydrogen to be flammable, it has to be 4% or higher. They just specifically made it so that it would do 2%. So it won't. You can hold a light to it and nothing will happen. And yet you still get the hydrogen. So it's safe. You know, it's just, they were brilliant. I mean, it looks so simple. They made it look so simple, but it's really quite brilliant what they've done. And it's been exciting to share it with you.
Thank you. This will go out to the Syncretism audience, brother. Thank you for reaching out.
Absolutely.
And I really hope that there are people out there that can benefit from the, well, they will. And
absolutely. That's what I want. I want that, you know, I went through a lot of suffering, like physically.
Me too.
To discover this. You know, this is what led me to this. Because before, I didn't care what I ate. I just lived my life, whatever, you know. But I got real sick, and this is what ultimately helped me. And it led me down a certain path. And I hope that my suffering can reach, you know, hopefully the good that came from it, you know, can reach people. And that's why I appreciate you too. Yeah. So I can reach people, because, man, there's so many people out there hurting. There's so many people
and
out there
it's all health related.
It
very
much is.
Once you support the health, everything else falls into place. It's amazing. I've had good health for 3 months now. I had 10 years of really bad health. Obviously, it wasn't related to this machine, like in your case. I did another protocol, but the point is, whatever it is that brings you to health, you need your health. You can do a lot of work with your health.
Absolutely.
You know, you can do everything, and so this is
a
very important. Way. Yeah. So let's hope this will be blessing everyone that at least sees it and be inspired. You know what? Can I share one more quick one? Sorry, I mean, we're going on here. But I just thought of this one that I thought was cool. It's a story that I don't normally like to share, because I don't like people to get the wrong idea. But there was a guy who ate very unhealthy. He was overweight. He was an older gentleman. And he had all sorts of medical problems. Lots of inflammation also, blood pressure issues, all sorts of stuff. And when I talked to him about the hydrogen, he was like, and I was also talking about other things though. I was talking about healthy diet. I was talking about exercise. I was talking about other things that we can implement to improve our health. And he told me specifically, he said, I will not change anything. I'm not going to change the way I eat. I'm not going to change my sleeping hour. I'm not going to change anything. He goes, the only thing I'm open to is the hydrogen. That's all. And I thought to myself,
man, I don't know if it'll work when somebody treats their body that badly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I think that you give your best chance when you eat healthy, drink the right water, everything else. But then I thought in a positive way, because I'm like trying to be positive about everything. And I thought, you know what? This would be an interesting experiment. Let's see that even if he doesn't change anything and only does the hydrogen, let's see if it works.
Mm.
And that's I don't like to share this story because I'm afraid people will take it the wrong way.
That's right.
But in the end, it did work. His arthritis went away, his blood pressure normalized, everything that he was having issues with improved, and he didn't change anything. All he did was do a proper hydrogen protocol, and it still worked. And so I just thought, man, that really shows the power of this stuff, you know,
Beautiful.
because there's just a lot of people who it's difficult for them to change the way that they live, you know, and I understand. You know, everybody, you know, some people have Twinkie addictions, I don't know, you know, or soda pop or whatever it is. But anyway, I just thought that really showed what it can really do, even when we don't change. But imagine if we do eat healthy. Imagine when we do drink clean water. Imagine when we do all the right things and we implement this. This is the most powerful, out of all the things that I've done for health, and I've done a lot. I've also done the deworming.
Same.
I've done the clean diets, you know, the proper sleeping. I mean, everything that you can think of. I spent a small fortune on all these cleanses and all these different things. And as great as they were, I mean, everything was great. This hands down was the easiest thing that I ever did. Yeah. And it was the most beneficial. Out of all the things, this was more beneficial than all, and that stuff was hard work.
You go down to the foundation. You support your hydrogen intake, which is your number one element that you're made of. Get that right, the whole building stands firm and erect, for sure.
That is exactly how I've noticed.
Yep.
So I'm excited to see now what this will do for you too now.
Great. Well, when I get mine, then we'll do another one. Okay. And I'd like to do one in Spanish. That needs to be done because you speak Spanish very well, so we need probably do one at another time. But stay tuned, folks, because I will be getting one. There's going to be a special in the description somehow for people who mention this show and my name, that the company may actually give them a free a gift, like something like that or whatever. We're not too. We
don't really know yet.
Not yet, but so that will get me probably one at a very, very discounted rate, or I'm going to get one, and then we'll revisit this and see what happens once I've implemented this protocol. Awesome. I can see it's benefiting you, man, because you look really healthy, radiating, and good vibe. That's very important. Radiation and vibration, two different kinds of waves. Radiation from the heart, vibration from the mind and from the liver. So if the mind is balanced and healthy and calm, the radiation from the heart radiates, there's no vibration. Whereas thought waves, emotion waves, once we know the difference between those two waves, well then we will radiate and we will have a good vibe. So that would be a good support for it and a good protocol, I'm sure.
That's why good health is so important, man. Because we tend to be happier. There was some interesting research too about what it does for stress, which really just boggled my mind. I thought, how can hydrogen help with stress?
I can imagine how.
Sure. Really, and it did, and it does. There were studies where they were showing that mice that were overly stressed, if you gave them hydrogen, they could still continue to function. And I think it has to do with like the stress hormones. This combats when you get too much of the stress hormone. I think it brings them down, brings you more peace.
Gotcha.
And then you can begin to function again. But so it even helps with that. It's just been. It's been unbelievable. It's been unbelievable to meet with you, man. This is so cool. I've just been so excited.
Likewise, brother. Thank you. And blessings to everybody. Hopefully this will help many people.
Yeah, guys, if you want to learn more about hydrogen, you can always check out my channel. Cause
it's a great channel. There's hundreds of vids there. You really do a good job. So help people with the name. And
yeah, guys, my channel is Uprising144K. And I share other things on there, but I primarily like to share about hydrogen. But anything with good health too, I show people how to make hydrogen smoothies. Like for people who can't get a device, I show these smoothies so that you can help your body make its own hydrogen. It's not going to be as powerful as this, where it really extracts just the nectar of it all. But, if you can't get one, then you can at least start with like hydrogen smoothies and stuff. So check out my videos at Uprising144K, and hope you guys find that helpful. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to give today's video a thumbs up, and I was so happy to be able to share this knowledge with you, brother.
Likewise.
Super
and
excited.
I'm so happy sharing it with many people.
I hope you guys found it helpful, man.
Yeah.
This was a blessing.
Yeah.
This is totally a blessing. And yeah, we'll do some other videos in the future. It'll be really
Heaps
exciting.
of love and big hugs, folks. Till the next video. Thank you.
All right. Beautiful, brother.
Beautiful.
This is awesome.